Hello, I welcome you to another time on Indigenous, hence the Indigenous Voice, which is brought to you by Save the Deaf and Endangered Languages Initiative. Today, I am discussing the sign language situation in Gabon. I want to discuss this country again today to make a case and to make some things much clearer than I was able to bring them in my last discussion. I will start from where I stopped in the last discussion. I left you with a question, which was, what is a feature of an average deaf child born in the country of Gabon, where it is said to be about 3 sign languages in use, and 2 are foreign, or rather foreign-based, and 1 is indigenous, which is the marginalized. I want to bring a few things that we are aware of that is happening in Gabon today to you, and to use that to buttress my point. Gabon is a country that has about 3 associations for the deaf. The Association of the Deaf Mute of Gabon, ASMG, which was created in October 25, 1985. It is said to have been created after the initiative of Mr. Banza Wenze Dominic, who was the first deaf teacher that came from Congo, and he taught in Gabon. And this is believed to be an association that takes care of deaf people in Gabon. The second association of the deaf in Gabon is an association called Andes Gabon, and it is an association that deals with the needs of the people who have become deaf or hard of hearing, and who are also living around the national territory, the Gabonese national territory. The Andes Gabon is believed to be apolitical, non-denominational, and non-profit. It is also believed to have a vision of empowering the deaf and hard of hearing in Gabon to help them to enjoy their civil rights. It was created on January 2nd, 1991 in Libreville, which is the capital of Gabon. The third association is the Gabonese Union of Deaf and Hard of Hearing, UGSM, that was created on the 8th of January 2006. And what do I want to do with these 3 associations? My concern about these 3 associations is that it is on record that these 3 associations, each one of them uses Gabonese Sign Language as a means of communication in their interaction, in their unions, in their meetings, and other businesses. It is believed that they use the Gabonese Sign Language. The question is, what constitutes Gabonese Sign Language? Remember, in the last video, I brought about the presence of ASL, American Sign Language, and the presence of French Sign Language over and above the Indigenous Sign Language. Also remember that I mentioned that Dr. Andrew Foster, in his work in African countries, visited Gabon and was instrumental to training some deaf scholars and the establishment of deaf school in Gabon. Gabon is one of the few Francophone African countries that he visited. And even though that they spoke French, that brought about the influence of American Sign Language, which unfortunately it is said to still be in existence today. All right, so remember I mentioned that the influence American Sign Language has in that country made Kamai 2006 to express that there was a birth of a new language. And I made this statement that we have not resolved what sign languages came together to form the variety of sign language that Kamai expressed to have been used in Gabon. And he said that it would have been a unique sign language that is not probably used in other African countries. But today, we learned that not many deaf people use French Sign Language. Not many deaf people use French Sign Language. The people that use French Sign Language today in Gabon are teachers of the deaf who got trained in Cameroon and are teaching in possibly deaf schools and other schools where deaf people go to. Remember that I said that deaf education ends in elementary school. That is to say that after the elementary school, deaf people can find themselves mixed up in any other institution if they want to go further, if they want to acquire education. And so this is still happening right now. Now, come to think of the whole linguistic situation in Gabon, one can rather describe it as a little bit somewhat chaotic. One can describe it as a chaotic linguistic situation that is being created. Let's go back to trace how this subtle situation was created. First of all, we go ahead to recognize the presence of indigenous sign languages in all African countries, not excluding Gabon. And now we recognize the emergence of a foreign-based sign language through Dr. Andrew Foster. And I want to mention that in any way, every time we have talked about the sign language situations vis-a-vis deaf education in Africa, it is so important for us to separate the two things. Our work here focuses on the sign language situations in African countries. There is no doubt that the countries in Africa where Dr. Andrew Foster did his work, he brought deaf education and helped to strengthen others, particularly using sign language. It is important for us to understand the difference between the implementation of deaf education in countries and the language, the implementation of language of instruction. Many times people have mumbled up this, try to talk about the work of Andrew Foster in developing deaf education in Africa as per the work of Dr. Andrew Foster developing sign languages in Africa. And our work here is making an effort to try to make us understand the difference between the two. Dr. Andrew Foster did not or did little or nothing to develop indigenous African sign languages. Rather, the emergence of the variety of sign language that he came with to Africa, the result of it, as we are looking at them right now with the scope of linguistic analysis, is what we are looking at as a thing that did not help indigenous African sign languages. So this happened in Gabon, and when ASL-based sign language was introduced, the indigenous took a way of death. The indigenous took a pathway of diminution. I want to get this a little bit clearer. Gabon is a country that was colonized by France. And for many years, they were made to speak French. as opposed to other countries like Nigeria and Ghana that were not colonized by France, but English-speaking countries. And one thing that we're trying to drive at here is, if, for instance, the foreign-based sign language that is found in African countries were to be a product of colonialism, it would have been to a large extent understandable that, oh yeah, they were the results of colonialism. And remember that colonialism happened for many years. Hundreds of years of slavery and colonialism. Africa suffered from all this. But one thing that is clear is Dr. Andrew Foster arrived Africa. The first African country he did arrive was Ghana on their year of independence. He went to Nigeria on their year of independence. And his work went massively across many African countries, as we might find out in many literature. And so we come about talking about the work of Andrew Foster in the country of Gabon, where right now deaf education is still nothing but stunted, has had little or no growth since after then. Not the fault of Dr. Andrew Foster, but the question is, whose fault is it? But we know that there has been very little good governance in many African countries since after colonialism. We know the factors that are, playing role in those. But where the point of our passion lies is, how can we develop African sign languages over and above this trend of events that have happened? And I left you with the question of, what is the future of an average deaf child in Gabon growing up in a country where what constitutes Gabonese Sign Language is said to be American Sign Language and the local sign language, in a country that speaks French by colonization? What constitutes the feature, the linguistic feature of a deaf child born in that country, where some teachers trained in French Sign Language are using it in school to teach deaf students? What constitutes the feature of a deaf child born in a hearing family in that country, where there is little or no presence of indigenous sign languages, and the deaf child goes into school, possibly be taught by a teacher who trained in French Sign Language, and eventually gets into the society where ASL-based sign language is used? Little or nothing said about the indigenous sign languages. That is our question. And this question is so dear to our heart, and we want to continue to stress upon this. Gabon is a case study of the forces that are working against the development of indigenous African sign languages, and this needs a lot of attention. This is the indigenous hands, the indigenous voices, where we stress the issues concerning the development of indigenous African sign languages. And we will continue to sound these evidential facts based on studies, so that we will wake up, both deaf and hearing, to the development of our indigenous African sign languages. Today, I have brought a clearer case of what is going on in Gabon to you by stressing the fact that Gabon is said to use Gabonese Sign Language, which is made up of American Sign Language and indigenous sign languages, a country that speaks French. There could be an argument of the difference between sign languages and spoken sign languages. We know that. But come to think of it, a country that speaks French and uses French literacy materials to teach even the deaf students. And there is an influence of American Sign Language, even till today. I'm going to see you again next week, and we're going to be talking about maybe Gabon, maybe another African country. Until then, stay safe wherever you are. Bye.